Now on this video I'm going to do a few experiments that I've wanted to do for a long time to try to recreate the look of gold anodized parts. Now recently we've done an awful lot of polishing of aluminum and steel, and that's worked out really well as using the Flitz polisher and the orange buff and ball. But now an anodized part has a totally different look than a painted part does. The painted part has a very shiny look. Anodized is kind of a dull look. And when I restored the 750, I would have liked to make the forks look more anodized, but when I painted them I said, gee, it really didn't look bad. I thought it looked fine. But it doesn't look like anodizing, it looks like gold paint. Well, what I want to try to create today is the look of anodizing. Now doing a restoration, it's nice to have the nice shine like you have on a painted rim, and accented by the gold, which is relatively dull. Now real anodizing has a lot of advantages. Of course it's very durable, but the downside is it tends to fade in ultraviolet light. Paint a lot less prone to fading. But in the course of doing these little restorations that I do, I would like to have the option of doing selected parts that have the look of being anodized, not the look of being polished. And the challenge is always, when you do paint, at least when I do paint, you want it to be as shiny and smooth as possible. Not so with anodizing. You want it to look about like 1000 grit sandpaper does. It's just a little rough and dull. The paint experiment, it probably won't be real good in terms of being durable, like on a lever it would not be appropriate, but there's certain things it would be fine on. I think a set of forks. And of course, next fall, our plan is to do a full restoration, a full Yamaha racing paint job on this. Keep this bodywork exactly the way it is. It's the master plan for next year, but one of the things I would like to have as part of that is to have the forks looking like they were gold anodized. But the reality is trying to take forks apart to re-anodize them, cost prohibitive, definitely cost prohibitive. Or replacing them, yeah, maybe, well, but to have this in my toolbox of things I can do to make faux anodizing, and that's what I'm going to try to do today. That's all beside the point, but this is one job I think would be really nice, would be if this bike had gold forks. And just being able to replicate the look of an anodized part up to a point, there'll always be things I want to have that look on, and I'm going to try to do that today. And of course the fallback, if we fail, and we do fail from time to time, when we fail you could always go back to painting things gold and putting a clear on, the two-part clear. So let me go down and get some guinea pig parts to start with. Now the Renthal bars are just one example of something that's anodized. The other thing with anodizing, and a lot of people don't realize this, the gold is not in the anodizing. The gold is in the coat above the anodizing. The gold just is a separate coat that's on top. But here's the thing, you can scratch it easily. Anything gold anodized scratches, and maybe if we figure out how to do this the way we want, we can make that look like a scratch or a chip or whatever would be less obvious, or even that we could do a kind of a repair. But I'm not going to know until I do some experiments. So as I was out in the shop this morning and out in the garage, I had an idea. I have the old discs that were on this bike originally, and they were silver in the middle. This would be a good chance for us to try to come up with a finish that's dull, a little rough, and has the look of gold anodizing. Now, of course, at this point in time, I don't know exactly what I would even want to use this for, but I know there'll be future restorations, future projects, and being able to do it and being able to share it on a YouTube video, a lot of fun. It'll make my day complete. Now the good news. In the last week or so, we worked on a project for Karen. We haven't put the clear on these yet, but we have some spares. Now, I've said many times, when I used to warp up a set of discs, I'd always hang it up on a wall to remind me that I was clumsy or whatever, or that I was riding too fast. So anyway, that's beside the point. I have some guinea pig parts to use today to do my testing. So having plenty of spare parts in this case, what I'd like to do, I'll clean up everything with Simple Green. These are already in pretty reasonable shape. I'll have to back mask off the disc area and the buttons. And then what this will do, this will give me a real world test of a part that normally would be anodized. And keep in mind another thing, if I can get this faux finish to look good, I can do steel anodized. Now in the real world, anodizing is typically done on aluminum. In fact, I've heard various stories that there's certain grades of aluminum anodized differently. In fact, my friend George Venturini had an anodizing shop. He would probably know a lot more. For me, it's more important to know about the paint. But to get this to look like it's an anodized part, that'll be the goal today. So step one, as we always do, clean everything with Simple Green. Now what I do is I let the Simple Green soak for a few minutes, have a cup of coffee, since it's only the inside, but we're going to have to back mask the disc area here. And of course, no matter how carefully you clean it, Simple Green is the best. If you have steam in a steam cleaner, you can do that. That's an extra little thing, but I'll spend a little time and get these cleaned up. But then I want to make a test piece. Before I do anything with this, I want to make a test pallet, and I'll show some of the things that I've done in the world of modeling that have worked. Maybe some of them are going to work on this. Now this is a trickier part to backmask than you think it is, because the backmasking goes around these buttons, and I'm trying to get this, even though this is just a guinea pig part, I just would like it to be nice. We'll hang this on the wall at some point in time for a sample of, or that we know that the final paint we mix will be exactly what that looks like. So now before I start mixing paint, I want to look for something to use for a test palette, because I don't want to actually paint these parts till I finalize what my paint formula is going to be. Now the last time Mark was over here, he donated a couple of these signs. What does it say? Danger, falling motorcycles. But they'll be perfect for this. I would normally use this for making brackets. This can be a test palette because it's aluminum, and I can do various testing of the what I hope is going to be the material, the final material I'm going to use. Now the most important thing whenever you do any painting is to get the grease and oil off. Simple Green is pretty good at that. Then what I'll do is I'll wire brush this finish, because most of the time if you look closely at parts that are anodized, they have not a smooth jewelry-like finish. It's usually a wire brush finish, or and usually you can see the little finishing marks in it, lightly sanded, whatever, but this will make, I want to get the grease off the whole thing. I don't want to contaminate the parts, but. And by the way, anytime you see a stop sign laying on the street, pick it up. It's good bracket material or test material like this is. Now what that's going to do, it'll leave just enough scratches in there like a normal anodized part would have. Okay, so our part has just a rough scratch surface from a wire wheel that pretty much, that's what it would be if you were anodizing it. So, and some of those scratches may or may not show through, I don't know. But there's a reason, it's a simple reason, a lot of people don't understand. Anodizing is relatively inexpensive compared to polishing. If they had to polish a fork leg, believe me, it would be a lot more than if you anodize it. Polishing is labor intensive, and as I've done enough polishing videos and I've done enough polishing to know. But so step one on this is I have several different colors of gold. I want to take what would be the first color of gold, and just like I did when I did the Flitz polishing test, paint one with an Iwata airbrush and normal thinner. Now, you can make something shinier or more dull. High gloss thinner they make that takes a long time to dry. and the thinner used for primer will if you look at primer, it dries dull. Now you can see what I have. I've written on the can, 750 forks. These are the forks I painted gold, ready to spray, which means it has the normal amount of mid-temp thinner in it. So this will be a good thing for our first test. The thing with gold is the pigment always, you see the pigment on the end of the screwdriver? Pigment always settles, it settles very quickly too, so if you're painting anything big gold or silver, anything with metallic, you got to keep shaking the gun or the airbrush. In this case, I'm going to set up the Iwata airbrush, 25 pounds of pressure for the first test. So the first test I used to try to make the paint dull, I just dried it with a hairdryer. Now what happens, it dries, the quicker it dries, the duller it dries. The longer it takes to dry, it'll dry shiny and smooth. That's why high gloss thinner takes forever to dry, and it's got a lot of penetration. So just by drying a part with a hairdryer, that seems to make it a little bit duller, a little bit more like anodizing and less like paint. But now the next step on this is going to require a little paint mixing. Now what'll speed up our testing a little bit is it's very cold out there and the heat is on. And this quick drying adds to the making the part dull. When you want it to shine, you want it to take forever to dry. Now in model airplanes, when you want to make something dry dull, you want a propeller, for instance, you want it to look flat black, the catwalks on the airplane. There's a trick. You take Brodac dope, butyrate dope, and you mix in a little bit of baby powder. Now what I'm going to do, I have a little bit of my gold, and it's an indeterminate amount, of course. It'll spray exactly the same. And now I want to do is move the tape over on my part, put this paint in the airbrush, dry it the same way with a hairdryer, and see if this dries any. It'll have a different texture. It'll be, maybe you won't even see it on the video, but it'll have a dull look like anodizing does. And by the way, they do make shiny anodizing. It's not the same thing. The shiny anodizing is not the same thing as what I'm trying to replicate here. I'm trying to replicate the gold that's on, similar to the discs or on the Olin's forks. Masked off the first test. And this will be the second test will be with, and it's an indeterminate amount. I don't think, if you're going to spray with a spray gun, you could put a lot more, but with an airbrush, we'll see how that's going to work out. It'll be an interesting test. Because this works with Brodac dope, butyrate dope, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. This is just ordinary, the paint we use, it's automotive paint. Fifth Dimension, I think is the name of it. Now it's ironic, I'm always trying to make things shinier. Here I am trying to make them dull. This is the paint, let's backwards here. The paint right out of the can. And this is what's on the 750 forks. And, well, of course, with 5-star clear over it. But look at the change in the color. It gets a lot browner, a little bit. I don't know if you can see this on the video. It gets a lot duller, of course, because of the talcum powder, and a lot browner from that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But keep in mind, we're not trying to make something shiny or gold, like gold jewelry. I want to make that anodized look, that it's a little rough. Now what I'm going to try next, of course, one of the things you could always do is buy flat clear and put it over this. That's still a choice. I don't know because I haven't done it yet. Najat bought some flat clear a while back, and I don't have any of it left. But we could do a little test, put the flat clear over that. But I know if you put shiny clear over this, it's going to be shiny, it's going to look like paint. So my feeling is this looks a lot more like paint, this looks a lot more like anodizing. So I had a cup of coffee, I was playing around, everything dried, and I thought I'd make up a couple of things that I've learned today, because the purpose of all our videos is to learn something, and then through YouTube and through our A-team, pass on the information. What I did today, I did not use primer on the part. The reason is I just want to keep the paint as thin as possible so I can pick up all the little tooling marks. And by the way, that's why people paint things flat black. It covers up the tooling marks the way primer does. It's cheaper. I made 2 little batches. I did one with fast dry thinner. That part came out a lot duller. The high penetrating thinner, glossier. The airbrush worked great. 25 pounds a square inch on my compressor. Every compressor is different. Every gauge is different. I put a little talc in the paint. It made the paint just a little bit duller and a little bit, it changed the gold to a little bit of a brown color. And then I was looking around, but I couldn't find any. I was hoping we had some left from, Glenn bought some flat clear, and so did Najat, but I don't have any left that I can test, but this will be one test we're going to do in the near future, that's for sure. Now, I lied. I went through 2 more buckets of paint cans that I thought I had, and look what I found. Flat clear. So the last test I'm going to do, and there's enough to do a test, not a lot more. There's probably less than enough to do a real job with, but we do need a mix of this flat clear 6-to-1. We're going to give this a shot. And by the way, this is really funny. It's 5-star too. So it's original flat finish clear coat. Let's see how that works. See, here's where I couldn't find it because I got all of these boxes and I've got the whole cabinet filled with these paints. And I always save them for touch-ups and if somebody needs a repair on a bike. And I got some more gold. It's a darker gold that I did Tim's RD with. So we'll get the test. We're going to have some fun the rest of the day here. And at the end of this video, I'll report the test, the findings. Now, I'm not really sure if you can see the difference because of the difference in color. When the light hits it, they change color, of course. But to be honest, the flat clear is shinier than when it has no clear. So, but I guess the advantage of having a flat clear, you have some protection on it. But anyway, so the bottom line here is I'm going to take the original thing, and I'm going to just put a little bit of talcum powder in and not use the flat clear on our real parts. Although the flat clear is funny stuff. It's shinier than, I'm not sure if that's possible. And these are totally dry. They've been up by the heating vent for a while, but I spent most of the day trying to come up with something that I thought would replicate anodizing that I already had in shop. And I think the closest one is just to use the paint with the talcum powder in it. So before this day ended, I did so many experiments with the talc, 3 different colors of gold, and got, well, what I think is pretty close to what I want. It definitely dried up flat. That was the main thing. I did not have a shine gloss to it that it looks like paint. And they're going to cook up by the heating vent for, I don't know, half an hour or so before I pull off the back masking. And that is as close to an anodized look. I can't imagine that you could get it a lot closer than that. It's as flat as can be and very close to the color, but of course the color could change and no two are the same. So we'll see how it looks when we pull the back masking off in about a half an hour. So they have dried up by the heating vent, and a couple of things jumped out at me here. I'm not sure you're going to see it on the video, but this really does have the look of an anodized. Not only that, it feels anodized. It has that little, about like 1,000 grit sandpaper does. Because remember, anodizing doesn't drop in and fill gaps like paint does or primer. So it always would leave that little, especially if you're going over a glass beaded part, it mimics the surface that it's on. And the color I can vary. I can make it a little more silvery. I can make it a little more gold. That isn't really the issue. The issue is I wanted to have the flatness and the texture, and I don't know, but I know for sure one thing. this would not be a real good choice on a high wear and tear part, because it really doesn't have the protection of clear coating. And anything you have to wipe off a lot, this might not be a good choice, because wiping it off is going to be way more work than wiping off a shiny polished surface that has regular clear. Now, it's safe to say today I think we learned something about making these finishes flat like this. I'm not sure how we're going to use that in the future, what we're going to use it for, but I like having the ability to make that part look like it's been anodized. So when I look at it and put it right next to the part that I was trying to replicate, it's really pretty close. But again, I think here's the advantage. The part that really is anodized is a lot more durable. The part that we've done, I think, would be way more a maintenance issue. So if you have a part, again, that's like taking a lot of beating, well, the anodized, I think, would be better. Like wheels, for instance. I wouldn't do this process on wheels. But on selected parts or part of a trim package for a restoration, I think it would be fine. And just as an example, there's the flat part, the part that's painted and has clear on it. How different the whole look is. And of course, if you're doing wheels, or again, I keep repeating it, but it's so true. Parts that take a lot of abuse or that you have to wipe off regularly, shiny is the answer. Flat is not the answer. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We've learned a little bit. Hope we've been able to share it. And for sure, on every motorcycle, there's parts you'd want to have polished and shiny. And now we have the ability to make selected parts flat and dull. Without even using the flat clear, we have the ability to do it. And there's definitely a chance we'll be doing something with this process that we worked on today. That we'll be doing some parts on the next restoration we're going to do is the FZR in the fall. So again, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.